Welcome to the Acceptable Accuracy Podcast. I'm Philip.
And I'm Tyler.
And I'm also Tyler.
Since what? Yeah, exactly. Whenever we go to Taco Bell, this guy does this. So now we have the Taco Bell. Yeah, this is how we're starting a podcast. Now that we use a Taco Bell app, beforehand, he would order in my name, and I didn't know this. So they'll say, Tyler, and I'll go up, and I'm like, I didn't order this.
This isn't my food.
And he'll come right behind me. He's like, because that's mine. I'm like, wow.
So little do you know that I'm actually in the process of legally changing my name to Tyler.
Why would you do that?
Just so I can order a Taco Bell at the same time and get my name to be called as Tyler.
You can just change it on the app. You don't need to legally change your name.
But it would be more fun that way.
Oh, my goodness. All right, moving on.
Okay.
All right, so welcome to episode
Taco Bell
one.
Podcast.
Episode 1 of our new series, Head to Head, where we will be comparing and putting up two things, whether guns, things, equipment against
holsters,
each other.
Belts, plate
Exactly.
carriers, helmets,
Which
sunglasses.
Yep, exactly.
Taco Bell.
No.
What
What are you going to put Taco Bell against each other?
I
T-Bell
don't know.
versus...
a chalupa versus a gordita crunch. Is that what they're
Gordita
called?
wins. All right, moving on. So, fun... I can't believe Taco Bell had their... whatever it was, their reveal of their new items, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's like SHOT Show, but for Taco Bell.
I was thinking the Apple, like the grand Apple reveal.
Like Steve Jobs used to do.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I was thinking when I saw it. Like, I thought it was genius. I thought it was hilarious. Whoever does their marketing needs a raise.
Absolutely.
You hear that? And when you do
You'll
get a
Taco
raise,
Bell.
Sponsor us. But I'm kidding.
Every
But
episode.
on episode 1 today of Head to Head, we are comparing
The
War Poet versus...
the Poor Poet.
So what
Whoa. This is the battle of the Glock clones.
Exactly. The Gucci Glock versus the...
Garbage. No, because it's not really garbage. It's great. It's a great gun versus the what's like a baseline for like
The
stuff.
average Joe.
Yeah, like the average
The
Joe.
acceptable. Is that the acceptable Glock?
This is the acceptable accuracy Glock clone.
Is that what it is? Are we coming out with an acceptable accuracy Glock one day, Philip?
Maybe we should. I mean, it would be very on par for us where we just, it's like just middling. We're going to middle and we'll get the middle Glock and we'll go with it.
Yeah, middle ground. There we go.
What like Tyler was saying was we're going to do these head-to-head episodes. This is something that we have been like in our brains has taken up residence that we've wanted to talk about. We actually talk about all the time anyway, is the Poor Poet versus the War Poet. And what the Poor Poet is actually a Palmetto State Armory Dagger, right? So Tyler,
is it a knife?
It is not a knife.
So we're comparing my gun versus your knife.
It's going to get even more confusing because now they're going to have the saber daggers.
I know.
So,
I did hear about that. That's hilarious.
Before we go down that rabbit hole, Tyler, real quick, what is a Glock clone?
So a Glock clone is simply that. It's a clone of a Glock.
Fantastic. Moving right along.
That's all I got, man. Like how else? It's pretty self-explanatory.
So the Gen 3 Glock patent is it's out. So anybody can make a clone. So
I believe my War Poet's actually a Gen 4.
Isn't that still under patent though?
I don't know for sure, but I was listening to some videos today and they were saying it's a Gen 4. I could be wrong, but
just keep that secret between us and our viewers.
Yeah, no kidding.
Viewers? Who's watching this? Listeners.
Yeah. They're watching the screen. Some people watch the screen.
Fair. I'm hopefully watching the road.
They'll see the
driving.
numbers move up.
All right. So anyway, so I'm curious, before we kind of get into it again, so we kind of came about the purchase of these firearms in different ways and for different reasons. Tyler, why did you purchase the War Poet? And who makes the War Poet anyway?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the War Poet is on the line of Shadow Systems. So Shadow Systems is a company based out of Texas, and they're a gun manufacturer. I believe they started off as selling parts, probably 4 Glocks, specifically 4 Glock clones, but eventually they became what they are today. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, people. So Shadow Systems, my bad if I'm wrong. And so the so the MR9, I specifically have the Shadow Systems MR920 in the War Poet edition. The MR920 is based off of the Glock 19. It's a Glock clone. And when I say War Poet edition, it's from the Warrior Poet Society. So it's owned by John Lovell himself, the Ranger, the bougie Ranger.
The bougie Ranger. Tyler, who's your favorite personality in the gun sphere?
It would be Mil-Spec Mojo. I one day want to be like Mojo. I'm going to be Mojo fast and accurate.
You mean like Mojo? But do you want to be the Asian Mojo?
Yeah, exactly. I am Asian Mojo.
I thought John Lovell was like your favorite guy.
He is. I just wanted to get you off guard there. No, John Lovell is definitely my personal favorite. He was, when going back to episode 1 when we spoke about getting into guns, John Lovell was probably one of my first 5 online personalities that I really clung on to. It was definitely Jerry Michalek, Honest Outlaw, Demo Ranch, and a couple other guys. And eventually I stumbled upon John Lovell. I'm like, I kind of like this guy. And as I listened more to him, I found out that he's a retired ranger. He was a Christian missionary, and he preaches the importance of important traditional biblical values and the importance of balance, which I'm all about that. So now I'm very thankful for John. I've met him, and he's a real deal. So
then he makes a Glock clone.
He does. He makes a Glock clone
by himself.
Yeah, no.
Or does it, when like at night, like the cobbler with like at night he falls asleep and then the elves put together the Glock clones? Is that how that works?
Yes, it's exactly
that
how
same
it works.
thing. Fantastic.
Yep.
So what you're saying is, you were saying that your gun is made by elves at night. That's what I'm hearing.
No, it's made by gnomes, actually.
Gnomes at night.
Specifically led by the battle gnome himself, Paul Perkinson.
I was wondering where you're going with that. Fantastic. Sorry, mine was mined by and forged by the dwarves inside the mountain of Moria.
Yep, and you have the battle dwarf leading it. So what about you?
Yeah.
Tell me about your Shadow System. No, I'm sorry, your Palmetto State.
Shadow System.
Yeah, your Shadow Systems. Hey, it's the memes like, I want a Shadow Systems. We have Shadow Systems at home. Which, don't get me wrong, the Dagger is a great, great gun. So go ahead and talk about the Dagger.
I think that's actually how it started. Is I had the Dagger, and you're like, it's like a Shadow Systems at home, and I said, you get the War Poet, and I got the Poor Poet. And since then, we've been calling it that. And a lot of people will say that the Palmetto State Armory, like firearms, are for the poors, right? And they are definitely more affordable. But I would say that the quality of Palmetto State stuff in general is. People always ask, would you trust your life to it? And the answer is yes. And I'll kind of get into that later as we start going down the why behind what we chose. But I picked this specific firearm. I'm primarily a Smith & Wesson shooter, and anything competition related, I usually shoot a Smith & Wesson. However, I had purchased the suppressor, and I really wanted to be able to shoot pistols suppressed. And if I wanted to buy a Smith & Wesson at the time that had an optics cut on it, I was going to be spending upwards of $800, which is just way more than I wanted to spend on a firearm. So Palmetto State Armory, one of the things that they're really known for is making firearms like that people want, right? So they don't just make firearms that like they are going to just put out there and that they want, right? And that's important to do your own thing as well. But looking at the market, I believe what Palmetto State Armory said was, we know what the market's looking at. They're going towards optics cut slides, suppressor height sights with, the option of getting a threaded barrel, right? So I saw that. Plus, I had a whole bunch of Glock magazines they had around from a PCC that I owned. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I might as well own something that will take Glock parts, Glock magazines, and then it was really affordable. So it kind of checked all of those boxes that I was looking for. And so I purchased it. I have now had it for quite a while now, and I put easily 1,000 rounds through it, and I've had zero issues with it.
That's awesome.
Now, it's not my competition firearm, but it is my daily driver for my carry firearm. So to kind of answer that question of do I trust my life to it, people always ask that, right? Like there's always reviews of people online saying, do I trust my life to it? The answer is yes. Actually, carry it when I can carry. Then specifically carry it on like Sundays whenever I'm on the safety team at church. So yes, I trust my life to it, and I trust other people's life to it all. I've not had any issues with it. It's run everything from ball ammo to hollow point through it without any issues at all. I'm just extremely impressed with it. Not to say it's perfect, because there are downfalls to everything. So we want to kind of step into like the features of yours. So this is kind of the head-to-head section, right?
For sure.
So, like, what makes your clone better than my clone, Tyler?
That's pretty easy, but
Well, I mean, other than the fact that it's got John Lovell's branding on it.
it does. It's got subtle branding. It has one emblem there and one and it says War Poet on the actual barrel itself.
Oh, wow, and the actual barrel.
Yeah, bro. It's right there. It says War Poet.
That's fantastic.
So it actually is a War Poet.
Mine says
ASM
9mm.
Great. ASMR right there, right?
Yeah, no. You're right.
You're welcome, listeners.
We'll have to make a loop of that later.
Yeah, exactly. I know, right? So when it comes to the MR920 with the shadow systems, to kind of go off of what Philip was talking about, one of the reasons why I chose to get a MR920 shadow systems was because I wanted to go into the Glock route. When I started with guns, I started with a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. That was my first pistol, and that ran pretty well. It worked okay. I didn't have any issues at all with it. And soon after, I ended up buying a M&P Shield Plus because SIG just had to change the game completely with their micro compacts. So I bought the Shield Plus. Like the day it was released, I ordered it online. And that was probably one of my biggest regrets when it comes to buying a gun.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it was rough. Because I know you're a big Smith & Wesson guy. And
I'm a big Smith & Wesson guy.
I was actually going that route. When I first started, I didn't want to be like everybody else. I didn't want to get a Glock because everybody else had a Glock. So I was like, I'm going to get a Smith & Wesson. I'm going to get a Shield. I'm going to get an M&P. But unfortunately, my Shield Plus, Philip and I have talked about this,
Was a Shield negative.
Yeah, it was. After I had it for, 6 months, I probably put about 1,000 rounds through it. I had about 200 malfunctions in some way.
That's wild. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
No.
Especially from a company like Smith & Wesson. That is unacceptable accuracy.
Exactly. So it goes to show we're not sponsored by them.
No.
But but we're honest. And truthfully, even if we we're going to be honest.
Yeah. Actually, that brings up a really good point. I don't want to deviate too far, but we are definitely not sponsored by Shadow Systems, the War Poet Society, or Palmetto State Armory, or any of the holster companies that we'll talk about today. So these are our complete and honest review, other than the fact that we own these firearms, which will always tilt us in one direction.
Exactly. And going back to what Philip was saying, even if we were sponsored by them, we're going to be honest about it.
Right.
We will be brutally honest because our goal is to make sure that we build trust with you people, with our audience, with our listeners, because trust is valuable to us. And I don't want to lose trust for $1. No, for any money in the world. I never want to lose your trust. So with that, come to find out, there was an issue with the firing pin. So I would have failures to feed because the next round after he ejects would get caught on the firing pin.
That's wild.
It's so weird.
That is wild.
I showed some people and they're like, they've never seen that before. So I sent it back to Smith & Wesson. They did end up fixing it.
3 years later.
It did take a while. I think it probably took 6 to 8 months probably. So after that, I decided, you know what? I want to go the Glock route. I wanted to go the route where I could have a Glock, but not a Glock because I felt like they were blocky, they're ugly, and I did not like the Glock comp.
Were they glocky?
Yeah, they're glocky. Yeah. So that's why after doing some research, I decided getting the MR920 and the Gucci Glock, which I will admit was definitely influenced by John Lovell as well because it is his gun. And I'll admit, I absolutely love it. So now after all that backstory, now I can go into the features of the MR920 War Poet because this is what intrigued me. So I knew if I were to buy a Glock, I would eventually upgrade all of the parts. Because for some reason, even though it's called Glock Perfection, everyone just has to upgrade it.
Yeah.
They have to upgrade it. So with the shadow systems, they're basically a Gucci Glock without the Gucci Glock price.
That's fair.
Because yes, a War Poet isn't a cheap gun. Like MSRP, you're gonna be out without a red dot, so just the gun itself, you're gonna be about $999.
Wow.
About $1,000.
So like 3 Palmetto State daggers.
Yes.
Okay.
Which
and some ammo.
yes.
Yeah.
And I get that. It's true. But if you look at it, especially at the time, because when I bought it, I think the dagger was already released, but it was out of stock everywhere. Because when people got the emails, it'll get sold out within like 5 to 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I didn't know where I was at with Palmetto State Dagger just yet.
Would you say too that being your personality and the way that you buy stuff, you're very much a buy once, cry once type individual?
Yes.
So with this firearm, you plan to, like, this was going to be your daily driver.
Yes.
Right?
No question.
For everything?
Yes. So that's another reason why I got this size of gun, because I knew that this is a gun that I would be able to hopefully conceal every day. Because at the time, I was at more of the subcompact, micro-compact size gun, and now I have a compact / full-size gun.
Yeah.
So I knew that this would be a little harder to carry, but I knew I could flex it however way I needed to, whether it's concealed carry, to USPSA, to duty, to Wolverine 5K stuff.
Duty.
I did say duty.
Yeah.
You're so mature, Philip. So for me,
And I'm the older one.
yeah,
To be fair, I have a 12-year-old, so there's that.
and I work with kids for a living.
That's also fair.
So for me, yes, I'm very much a buy once, cry once, but I am also I'm going to get the cheapest thing I can right now. So this way, one day I could buy once, cry once.
That's fair.
I did that with my lawnmower.
Yep.
When I first bought a lawnmower, I got a $50 manual reel mower.
I just thought that because you were so strong, you wanted to prove to your neighbors how buff you were.
No, I was cheap because I just bought a house and I didn't have any money left.
That's fair.
So I bought that, and then 3 years later, I now have a Cub Cadet riding mower. It's cool. That's kind of been the story of my life with things. I get something cheap that gets me by. So this way, when I have the funds, when I feel comfortable enough, I'll buy the Gucci thing, because my goal is to keep that for as long as mechanically possible.
Right.
So with this, I already knew at the time a stock Glock was going to be about $500-$600. So after doing the math myself and watching other YouTubers do the math, if I could get a Shadow Systems with a red dot for about $1,300, or I can get a Glock and update it myself, and I'd be spending anywhere between $1,600 to $1,900. But I get to have it like this, ready to go with the manufacturer warranty.
Well, and I would argue too that the War Poet and the MR 920s
MR920
are much better looking than a standard Glock.
Yes.
Now, obviously, you can send your slide off and get it chopped up, cut up, purchase a third-party slide or whatever, or you could just buy the War Poet.
Yeah. My only thing too with getting things sent out to get it milled, stippled, slide cuts, you're out months now without a gun. So for me, like, this is the only gun I have. Well, I had my Shield Plus and my Shield, but I didn't trust my Shield Plus in my life, and I didn't feel like carrying only 7 rounds either.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm like, hey, I can buy this and I'm good to go. Which, fun fact, when I did buy it, it was during that time with Chase Bank, and I don't know if you remember that general that spoke out against the pullout of Afghanistan. I think it was around that time. And what had happened was, because that general did that, Chase closed their accounts. Yeah, you didn't know about this?
No.
Yeah, they closed his accounts, his and his wife's account.
Wild.
Because they didn't like what he was saying.
Wild.
So for me, I'm like, I'm a Chase guy. I have Chase credit cards.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I still do have them. So I'm not saying that I closed my accounts, but I'm like, you know what? I'm going to use my Chase points to buy a gun. So thank you, Chase. You bought me a gun.
Sponsored by Chase. No,
Yeah,
just kidding. Please, not just totally joking.
Yeah, no. No,
We're
actually,
gonna get a cease and desist from Chase.
I'm good with that one. I'm good if you guys don't sponsor us. So, but all that to say, that is part of the reason why I went my route with the MR920. So, what about you, Philip?
Yeah, kind of like I talked about before, I was looking specifically for a very like niche need to go with the Port Poet or the PSA Dagger. There are some things that I really liked about in regards to into the Dagger. A few of those we've touched on already, but it was everything I needed. Like Tyler said, that was right out of the box. That I didn't have to worry about adding anything or taking anything away from it because I didn't want to tinker around with a gun that I knew that I was going to carry. The one thing I knew, and we haven't really talked about a lot, is the optics cut for both of these firearms. So again, I am an optics shooter. I typically shoot either carry optics or limited optics in USPSA, and knowing that I was going to like shoot the competitions with it, so I was going to also carry with it too. So I actually ended up with a Hollow Sun HS507 and with the ACSS reticle from Primary Arms, and was extremely happy with that. And for those who don't know, it's the concept behind it. It's a chevron in the middle, but it's got a huge dot on the outside. So if you ever go to pull your firearm, you will know immediately if you're high or low for aiming,
or left, right,
or whatever, diagonal, whatever you want.
Yeah.
You'll know that you're incorrect based on the positioning of the outside donut that's around the actual optic. So when it's not visible, you know you're properly aimed. So some people will argue and say that is a crutch, and it also can be a set of training wheels too. But I will say that in the need for defensive use, I would much rather have every single cheat out there, like every single cheat code out there possible, with having to use it and just have to not think about it, right? Because obviously we train to shoot the dot and pull the dot every time, but you never know how bad your grip's going to be when something goes down. And if you're going to aim your firearm, you're going to want every single thing possible for your brain to be able to function at like an incredibly fast speed in order to do what you got to do.
Exactly. Well, I love what John Lovell says, as I quote him again, good tactics is cheating. If you are not cheating, especially in a self-defense situation, you're not doing it right.
Right.
Because unfortunately, bad guys are already cheating. They're the ones making the first shot. They're the ambush hunters. So we have to get every advantage we can. And for us, if it's having a big, massive, I don't know, like 120 MOA circle or whatever it is, so we can have a faster sight acquisition, go for it. I love it.
And Tyler uses the exact same dot that I do, which is really funny because when, again, you compare the Port Poet to the War Poet, they are pretty much the exact same firearm as well, too. One thing I wanted to mention, too, is I did purchase it, like I mentioned earlier, for suppressive shooting, to shoot suppress, and it does actually a fantastic job with that. One of the things that the advantage is, and this is where the head-to-head comes in, and this is why I will say, because this is my firearm and we're here to talk head-to-head, I will say that the PSA Dagger is better than, I say this because I don't actually know the answer on the side for Shadow Systems, but PSA does a fantastic job of supporting their firearms after they have been released with the ability to swap in and out parts at will.
That's awesome.
For example, I purchased this as like the Glock 19 size, and then it was literally a few months later, which I wanted that grip size, they came out with like the 19X grip size.
Yeah.
So, which was really awesome. So I ended up buying one of those as well, and it's like $50. So I've got like $300 into the firearm as its original format. It comes with a bag, it comes with the magazine, and it's a PMag, which is fine. And I've got a few regular Glock mags as well too that fit just fine in it. But it also came with the bag, and then again, the ability to then order those additional parts after the fact. So, for example, when I was shooting suppressed, I forgot to take off the little O-ring on it, and the heat of the suppressor causes it to snap.
Yep.
So I literally, next time I put an order in for ammunition from Palmetto State Armory, I just ordered the additional rubber ring for like, I don't know what it was, $5 or $10 or something like that, and they send like 5 of them.
Yeah.
Right. So I can get those parts immediately from them. Same thing with barrels. You can get non-threaded barrels, which I'll probably do at some point, because as I do carry it, just tend to dig into my leg a little bit. And then additionally, you can get things like I said, additional barrels. You can get different colored barrels. You can cover different slides. You can get slides that have different like types of cuts in them. I have a cut specifically for mine so that dust won't get into the unit. It's definitely a carry cut style. And it's not a bad looking firearm at all.
No.
And again, I've not had any issues with it. But there are downsides.
What are some downsides that you see?
So the downsides with the Palmetto State, there's a couple of them. The biggest one, and the one they'll hear about from a lot of other people, unfortunately, is holster compatibility. While it is a Glock 19 clone, or as they get different styles, Glock 17 clone, it's a Glock clone, it doesn't fit all Glock holsters correctly because of the size of the frame. It gets caught on stuff, especially when sometimes you can get away with it if you have a light on it because there's a little bit built-in extra give. But I did have to order all and I didn't own any holsters ready for Glock because it's my first Glock clone or first Glock or whatever. So I ended up ordering a bunch of different holsters, and the nice thing is, as a result of this new firearm, you've got a lot of holster companies that have trying to make a name for themselves that we're going to wait on the major manufacturers like Safariland or Tier 1 or whoever it is, or T-Rex Arms, whoever it is. They're probably not going to make a holster for the Dagger anytime soon. But you have the ability for other companies to step up and make stuff and make a name for themselves. So I actually ended up with an appendix holster from a company called Warhorse, and they're a small company. Literally, it was on Etsy. I found it. A similar setup to like the sidecar configuration from T-Rex Arms, or from like Tier 1's got their like side by side. And then additionally, there was a company called Nerd Holsters that makes like a more like quote unquote duty holster that has a like loop on the top to keep the firearm itself from coming out. So if I were to have to push this into a competition, I could run it as that, especially if I'm running like a tactical competition like the Wolverine 5K or the Zombie Invitational. I could run it in there if I had to. And actually, there's a funny story about that, which I will talk about later, where I almost had to. But then additionally, I found like a 3 o'clock holster as well too, from a local company actually here out of Michigan called KJ Concealment. I actually randomly found them at a gun show, and the holster's fantastic. It fits great. So again, you get an opportunity for other smaller industries to make the needed holsters. However, like I said, I was not a Glock owner prior, so I didn't have to worry about having all these holsters already. And if I had to, I could take like a Glock 19 or Glock 17 and put them in these holsters, and again, maybe a little loose versus tight, but it would still operate. So again, on all these, like my Warhorse holster is cut for a light, my Nerd holster is cut for a light, my KJ one is not cut for a light, but they're all out there and they're all available. I ordered from both these companies, from Nerd and Warhorse, and they delivered within a week, I think it was, for both of them, and they both stood up completely fine to the test of time. That is probably the biggest downfall when it comes to owning a Dagger. The only other real issue that I run into, actually, I guess there's 2 more. But the other big issue I look into is the actual grip itself, especially on the Glock 19 size. There's like these little cuts that are underneath like the actual grip of the gun. So when you go to see a magazine, and especially in the 19 size, you can catch your like the skin of your hand in those as your like grip hand, your primary hand, as you're seating that Glock magazine into the gun. Now with the X size frame, I don't really have that issue, and I got big old hands. I don't have that issue as a result because it extends that length down a little bit, and it's below where the skin of my fingers is and my pinky is, so it's not a really big issue.
Yeah, now I think about it, I saw a video of Lucas from TRX Arms when he got his Palmetto State Dagger. He didn't like that either, so he just cut it off.
Interesting.
Yeah, he
like the fully cut off the back strap of it.
Well, he cut off this whole bottom part right here.
Yeah, right at the bottom of the gun. Interesting. I don't know if I would do that.
Well, when you're a large enough company like
Yeah, you can do whatever you
TRX
want.
Arms, you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want. So
So that's really, those are the major issues. The minor complaint that I would have over the firearm is that a lot of these, one of the reasons I actually shoot Smith & Wesson is because it has swappable back straps. The PSA daggers as they are today do not have that. Now you could modify that whole concept by putting like a grip around it if you wanted to. There's plenty of third-party companies that would make a grip you could slide on to add some bulk to that. But to be honest, I've not really had any issues with like gripping the firearm compared to a bunch of other guns. Like I've owned Canics in the past, even with a large grip strap in the back, it just does not fit my hand well. And these do just fine for me anyway. So anyway, Tyler, what's the any downsides of your war poet?
I didn't even get to talk about all the other specs of my gun.
I thought you did already. But go ahead.
There's a ton.
Oh, all right.
So before I kind of go into the downsides of the War Poet, another reason why I really liked this is because of its multi-optic system.
Oh.
So I know Glock kind of has their MOS thing as well, where you can have multiple systems, but the beauty of what Shadow Systems did is they got the slide and they changed the internals a little bit to where you can they have a I believe they already have patented it, and you can basically put whatever optic you want on the slide, and it's a direct thread to the slide, no optics plate needed at all. So they have the longest screws in the game.
Could I put a like a scope on there, like a 1D?
Well, not a scope, but you can put any
you
pistol
told me
dot
I can
on
put
it.
any optic on
You
there.
can put any pistol optic on it.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's a Holosun, a loopholed RMR, you can put a 509T on it, an Acro, EOTech. You can Bushnell if you're about that life.
Fast fire.
What?
I got a fast fire too.
I don't even know.
Can I put that on there? Can I put that on your gun, Tyler?
I don't know what that one is. Wait, what?
Want to trade your Holosun
No.
for my fast fire?
I don't even know what it is, so I will not be trading it. But what's really nice is because of that, you can see the optic extremely low, and so now that I look at it, I do not have suppressor height sights.
Yeah.
I do not have them, but I can.
It sits so low though.
Exactly, so I can still easily see them as backup irons because of how low my optic is, which is really nice in that case.
Yeah, and for those who don't shoot with an optic, having a optic that's as low as possible, like to the actual barrel itself, is extremely important. I used to shoot it with a Delta point on my competition gun, and I just, for some reason, my body mechanics did not like that. So when I switched over to the Holosun, which is a much lower profile, it actually would ironically improve my shooting a little bit. So it makes things line up a lot easier. You know, there's not a lot of height over bore even with a Delta point, but it really reduces that down significantly.
Yeah. So, and also that's one of the main reasons why I got this, because I knew I was going to enter into the red dot game at that time, because I was irons only. I had iron sights on my shield and my shield plus, so I knew I wanted to transition to a red dot. So I wanted to get a gun so this way I could try out different red dots and I'd be fine. So this way I didn't have to get a gun specifically for that footprint, since this one can do the K footprint, RMR, and all the other footprints as well. So that's one of the reasons. Another thing that's really nice about this gun is so I think they actually took the inspiration from Smith & Wesson, but they changed it a little bit with the adjustable back straps.
Because you can change the actual, like you were just about to start talking about this, the actual grip angle of the gun a little bit.
Exactly. Right? I believe they call it their natural point of aim. So you have different angles of your gun, because when you look at different guns, they have different angles. You have a 1911, which is quite neutral for all the way to the other end of a Glock with the weird... Yeah, I know, right? To where you have the Glock that has the weird Glock hump at the bottom that really forces your gun more down. So it's interesting. So whenever I do shoot someone else's Glock, I have my shadow system feels similar. I present and I'm like, where's my dot? I'm like, oh, there it is. Because I'm not used to that grip angle anymore. I can get to it. It's no big deal. I need to remind myself that the grip angle is different. Because if you look exactly comparing yours to mine, we have two completely different angles of grip. So you can change your grip angle to be similar to like an M&P to a SIG P320 or 1911 or a Glock. and I chose to go the middle route, which is actually similar to M&P.
So does Smith & Wesson, the Shadow Systems, do they have their own? Like, 'cause they're trying to copy everybody else's grip angle.
No,
Do they have their own? Can you get a plate from them that, like, Shadow Systems grip angle?
no.
Can you get, okay, here's a real question. Very important questions. All the listeners want to know.
Okay.
Can you get a Springfield XD grip zone angle?
I don't even know what the angle is
man.
for that one.
Yeah, but does it say grip zone on it? That's the most important part.
Grip zone.
Grip zone does actually say
I
it
have
on there.
no
Because the
idea.
Springfields, they said grip zone on them. It's hilarious.
Do they
They
really?
got memed into infinity.
I have no idea.
But now they have their echelon, so that's cool.
I'm still very new into the firearms game.
He's not that new.
3 years, 4 years. I guess it has been 4 years now. Wow.
I'm like Tyler.
I still
am very
consider
autistic when it comes to looking at different stuff all the time, constantly.
I'm not. I'm of the belief of I'm going to pick one operating system and I'm going to be a master of it, and I don't really care about the other stuff.
So Mac operating system.
What's
or
up?
Mac operating or Windows.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Which is funny because I am very much a Mac and Apple guy, but I'm a big fan of keeping one ecosystem. Same with power tools. It's just like the previous podcast when we spoke with Brian, how pick an operating system and stick with it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a different holster for every single gun.
And I think that that's really where, I mean, you mentioned this before, but that's really where the Shadow Systems in the Glock 9 team size, like, is really fits your personality.
Yes, very much.
Because you have that, like,
That's my mentality.
This is the firearm I'm going to use.
Yes,
And you're not cursed with massively large hands like I am.
it's true.
not-
I actually
it's not
have
cursed.
I have smaller hands than the average guy. They're shorter, but it works. So I will admit, it is a little hard to grab the trigger.
Sure.
For me, so I have to adjust my grip just a hair so I can.
I did not actually know that you had to do that.
Yeah, I actually have a slightly different hand angle.
So I know you're a lefty. So what is the ambi setup look like, or the left-handed setup look like?
So the only ambi setup that I have for a Shadow Systems is the mag release. That's about it. I changed the mag release the other side. Unfortunately, the slide release is still on the left side, so I've learned how to release my slide release with my pointer finger.
HK slap. Is that how you do it?
Yeah, exactly.
good to
Yeah,
know.
I just go in. It's like pack. That's exactly how I do it. That's how I used to do it with my AR before I got a tactical link / bad lever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought it was funny. I'm like HK slap, pa. It was great.
Nice.
So there's that. That's a couple of things. That is one con for me, but I feel like that is most Glock clones anyway.
There's not a lot out there that
has
I'm
ambi.
looking for truly ambi. There's a few new new stuff.
I think Gen 5 is ambi, right? Gen 5 Glock.
that would be up. I
believe
don't
it
own a
is.
Glock.
That's fair. I believe Gen 5 is ambi. One of the reasons why I started Smith & Wesson routes because I knew not their shield, but their compact and full size are quote unquote ambi slide releases, but they call it a slide stop, so they don't like it when you use it as a slide release, which is actually also Shadow Systems. Trevor, who is the CEO and founder of Shadow Systems, he's of the belief as well that it is a slide stop, not a slide lever. So that's what he claims to why he doesn't do ambi slide release.
Yeah, teach their own, man.
That's his opinion. So I'm like, all right, because he does go over.
Oh, yeah.
He actually does. He's had hundreds of videos, maybe not, probably over 100 videos of him training, and he would actually grab the slide over the hand instead of actually using the slide release. So I do wish it was ambi, but I'm a lefty in a right-handed world, so I can't complain. That is so minor to me. Other than that, honestly, Philip, I have not had any issues with this gun. The only issues I've had were ammo related, because I did have some cheaper ammo that had hard primers, but that can't be helped. Other than that, I've had 3, maybe even 4,000 rounds through this gun and no major failures that I can think of.
Yeah, and I think we've even shot yours suppressed as well too, and that's been just fine.
Yeah.
When we put my suppressor on it and ran that, and it was not an issue at all. So I think, I mean, it really is a nice firearm, right? Like if you have the money and if you're gonna purchase them, but I guess we're going into the who wins thing. You want to step into that, and why would you purchase the War Poet over the Poor Poet? So this is kind of in conclusion, more or less, to like the argument, the head to head.
I'm truly of the belief it's the Indian, not the arrow. So I would say I would not. If you are choosing your first gun,
Yeah.
don't get a Shadow Systems.
Fair.
I would actually say that.
Yep.
Like I would encourage people like shoot it, try it out, see if you like it. But end of the day, unless you're not willing to put the training into it, if it's gonna be a safe queen or you have it just to have it, I wouldn't get it right away.
What if I really like John Lovell?
And that's fine. If you have the money for it and you really like John Lovell or you like Trevor from Shadow Systems, go for it.
That's fun.
You can get it. I just don't think that this should be your first gun. Or at least maybe not the War Poet itself, only because of the price. And they do have the Foundation series now, which is actually pretty cool. Like
That's a good point.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So it's not as cheap as a dagger, but it is, I think, like $500, $600 instead of $900. So now it is very competitive to a regular Glock.
Yeah.
And it's a Glock clone, but it has the multi-optic system. It has the adjustable natural point of aim back straps. It has everything that you really need. It has an okay trigger. I will admit that is one thing that I'm not the biggest fan of my War Poet. The trigger's okay.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite in the world. It works. It's okay. I've hit 100 yards with it before, so I'm not saying like I can do it, but it could be better. So
I think that's just the failings of having a Glock trigger, right?
Yes.
I know that there are...
It's better than a
third
Glock trigger.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. I have shot Glocks before, not just Glock clones. We were talking about this earlier with the triggers. I know we're trying to get into which one to pick, but
I prefer my trigger over yours.
The trigger on the Shadow Systems, I would definitely say, it feels heavier, but I think the only reason it feels heavier is because it breaks cleaner than the Palmetto State Armory Dagger does. The Dagger's got a lot of creep, and then it kind of mushes into a trigger pull, and then you can feel it break, like for sure. But it's not that kind of clean break like you're getting out of the Shadow Systems for sure. Again, I don't really notice it much anymore. I haven't noticed a lot of like, and this is not a flex by any means because I'm not the world's like greatest shooter. I'm not Jerry Michalik, but unless it's a really bad trigger, I don't really notice like one trigger over another anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because they've been shooting Smith & Wesson for so long and their triggers are really mushy.
Yeah, they are.
So
except for their new ones.
The new ones are better,
Their
but the
new ones
rumor
are
has it
pretty
that
nice.
because the Glock 3 patent went out, that they're more or less like Glock 3 triggers.
I will admit, I do miss my Shield Plus trigger.
That had a nice trigger.
That is a great trigger.
Yeah, ironically, I own the Smith & Wesson I shoot is a Smith & Wesson competitor, and it does not, that trigger on your Shield Plus is actually better than it is on the competitor, which is wild. And I don't know if that's just a break-in thing. That thing's got a couple thousand rounds through it now at this point too.
Yeah, there's it's a break-in thing.
It's
I only have about 1,000 through the Shield Plus, maybe 1,200 now.
But one of the reasons why I would pick the Poor Poet or the Dagger as a first gun, honestly, I would say yes.
I agree. I would, especially now. Philip and I spoke about this earlier today or yesterday, how if the Dagger was more readily available around the time when I bought my War Poet, I probably would have bought the Dagger first. Because once again, it's my mentality of I'm going to get something that's very inexpensive, work it well, and then eventually when I get to a point where I feel comfortable with getting something more Gucci, I will. So I think I would have eventually gone the War Poet, but I probably would have started with the Dagger.
And then now, in reverse, I would say that you probably would go with the Foundation series if you're looking for a backup. Because, again, holster compatibility and that kind of stuff. And familiarity, backstrap, swap, that kind of stuff like that.
Which is nice because my Shadow Systems work in every single Glock 19 holster, Glock 17 holster, 34 holster. So they all work. So now that's why I have all of my holsters are Glock 17 holsters, even though technically this is a Glock 19. But it is also a threaded barrel, so the barrel itself is a Glock 17 length. So,
but with the Palmetto State Armory, you're looking at $300.
Yep.
For the pistol itself.
Yep.
For an RMR cut with a case and a magazine.
Dude, your red dot's more expensive than your gun.
Okay, that's pretty sad. So all the long range shooters are like, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. But
Yeah, for a rifle, for a long range like
rifle.
6.5 or 308 rifle, not a pistol.
Yeah, the MSR on the Hollow Sun ACS says Vulcan's like 350, so
I
which
know.
is more than the actual dagger is,
That's
which is
hilarious.
pretty funny. But honestly, and I think a lot of it is because Palmetto State, I mean, they are the only ones that sell the dagger, right? I think there's maybe a few companies that they had agreements with that they were selling their products through, but they're distributing direct to them. But they're the only ones that are really selling their dagger, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot to be said about if you're the manufacturer and the seller of that unit, you don't have to deal with distribution at all. So that cost is reduced, right?
Yes.
And the owner of Palmetto State Armory, one of the three, has come out and even said recently on a YouTube video that his goal is to like make things like AR-15s and even pistols, I suppose, so synonymous and so available to your average person that even if they get banned, you're going to have so many of them out there that you'll be able to deal with, like if you had to purchase one later.
Yep.
Versus like full autos now, they're like stupid expensive, right? Because not enough people registered AR-15 lowers as full auto. And then as a result, the prices skyrocketed since the assault weapons ban. But I would definitely 100%, and it kind of makes me a little grumpy when some reviewers are like, I wouldn't trust my life to a Palmetto State dagger.
Why not?
I absolutely would. I have had maybe one or two issues with the pistol, and it was ammo related, right?
Yeah.
And everything else has been great. I carry this on a regular basis. I feel completely confident when I have it on me. Now, if I was going to like into the world scenario, I would definitely have my Smith & Wesson because most of my like heavy duty holsters and stuff like that are designed for it, and I've got the most time behind it. But for something that doesn't weigh as much as a brick, it's nice to have the dagger for sure. And again, just to support, through Palmetto State Armory, the availability of components, their warranty is really great.
Yeah.
I would say if you're going to get your first gun, I would highly recommend a Palmetto State dagger.
I agree with that. And I love Palmetto State. I have a couple ARs from them. They run flawlessly as well. So I only have good things to say about them. I listened to that same podcast / video with one of the founders and presidents with GOA and how he spoke. The PSA CEO said, hey, I want freedom over profit. I want the average American to have guns and for us to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government and evil and wickedness, which is awesome. He says, look, the reason why it's cheap isn't because we're cutting corners. It's cheap because we're not making that much money off of it. He keeps his profit margins extremely low for his daggers. So this way he can sell as much as they can. And I respect that.
Yeah. And I think you're going to continue to see the innovation through both companies.
Agreed.
We talked a lot about Palmetto State Armory, and they've got their Saber line of daggers on the way.
I was about to say, I am curious how much that's going to be.
And how they're going to be, the Gucci dagger, for example.
Yep. Without the red dot, my gut is telling me somewhere between probably $700.
600.
I'm thinking 700.
600 is my guess.
My gut tells me
we don't know.
We have no idea. But in order to compete with guys like Shadow Systems, I mean, Zev is even more expensive. I think Zev Technologies, I think you're looking around $1,500 to $2,000,
which is crazy to me, by the way. The biggest challenge I have with Glock clones and Glocks in general, and a lot of polymer pistols suffer from this as well too. And you can swap this stuff out and make improvements, but one thing I put a note on was that both of these firearms are very snappy when you're shooting them. I definitely think that a Smith & Wesson is going to have a little bit of a smoother felt recoil on it, but that's just me, and that's the way they equip the gun. And I think that could be a lot of the fact too that again I can get more hand on a Smith & Wesson because of the swappable back straps, and they have palm swells versus just like changing the length on it. But both fantastic firearms. I think in conclusion, I guess I would say if you're looking for that like be all end all Glock clone that you're not going to necessarily, you're going to spend a little bit more on, you're not going to break the blank.
Yeah.
Then Tyler, what do you think? You going to go with the Shadow Systems?
Of course.
I'm asking the guy that owns it.
I'm like, bro, you're talking to I'm biased. That's the thing. So for me, do your research, get your training, find buddies who have it, rent a gun, and see how you feel. Because I will admit, probably because I've had 3,000-4,000 rounds through my shadow systems, I have shot other people's Palmetto State daggers, and I'll be honest, I don't like it.
Really?
I don't like the trigger.
Well, that's fair. Everybody's different.
I can't do it. And which is funny because I started with the hinge trigger.
Yeah.
But I don't like the hinge trigger. So
Because yours has a dingus instead of the trigger and the hinge on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine's a flat face with a Glock safety, whatever it's called. So I don't know. I didn't like it. I remember I was at a range with a buddy. It wasn't even far. It was only 25 yards. Granted, I don't think his gun was zeroed either, so that's probably why. But I was struggling hitting 25 yards with his gun, and he hit it a couple times. But once I grabbed my shadow systems, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
A-zone. It was fine.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I have
AC.
I have a
couple troubles,
more
actually.
like I can if I pull my Smith & Wesson, I can hit headbox at 50 as we did the other day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where
it's your gun.
It is my gun is when I shoot the most. Whereas with the dagger, I don't feel as confident behind it, and that could be just I haven't shot it quite as much. The grip size doesn't fit my hand quite as well.
Yep.
But again, as a carry gun, I think it's a fantastic option.
I agree. So either way, both amazing companies, both based in America, which is great.
Yes.
I love that a lot. Shadow Systems is in Texas. Palmetto State is in South Carolina.
And Taco Bell is everywhere.
Yeah. Well, they're based out of it. So both companies who love America, love freedom, have amazing products, and I can't complain either way. So, like I said, get training, have fun, pick a gun, and stay strapped.
And with that, we will see you guys on the next Acceptable Accuracy podcast. In the future, what did you say? Stay strapped.
Yeah.
Or get clapped. Get clapped or stay strapped.
I'm not keeping that in.
Oh, yes, you are.